Hi everyone, hope you're doing well, and welcome to video part 4 of 3D Week 2 lesson videos. So what we want to do today is we want to start talking about our project and how we can add more detail. So you should be starting to model a barn. Uh, Not unlike mine, you can do a whole bunch of other details like that. And we have our basic silo here. For me, I'm just going to take this border here, bring it in a little bit like this, bring it in like that. And one more like that. So you should have a barn and a silo, and you should have your UFO from the previous assignment done as well. So bring that in the scene as well, if you have that. And what you want to do is start detailing out your scene a little bit to form the whole barn look. I'm going to give you a couple of hints and some advice here on how to work from low poly to high poly again. We're going to go through a couple more tools as a refresher, and you can start adding details to your scene. So really this starts off our larger assignment, which we're going to call barn assignment. And if I go barn assignment, you must have an alien ship, and you can write this down with me as I write it down. You must have a basic barn, low poly, and a silo, hay silo like I have, or if you want to do a different type of silo, that's fine. And 3 small objects. Now, these small objects that are in your scene could be a shovel, could be a pitchfork, could be a hay bale, 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 hay bale. It could be farm equipment. It could be a shotgun, and it could be anything you want. If you really want to go, this is what I like to call the extra mile of assignments. Try and model a tractor or a type of mechanical device. Basically, what these 3 small objects will cover, those are the extra parts of the scene to give it more life. The extra mile is the extra stuff you can do for the assignment. And what I'd really like is for the subject to be alien is using a tractor, beam, or hook to pick up an object. So you can make the main object, I'll call 3 small objects and 1 main object, will be what the alien is picking up, and you can make that anything you want. So you need 3 main objects. And I'll rename this one to pickup object. Sorry. There we go. So the barn assignment is 3 main objects. You have your alien ship, you have your basic barn, the low poly, and you have your silo over here. You have 3 small objects, your shovel, pitchfork, hay bale, shotgun, anything you want. They don't have to be high detailed. What we're trying to do here is make a complete scene, either in low poly or high poly, and then we can transform it a bit into a much more detailed version at the start of next week. We need 1 object for the alien to pick up. Now, this can be really a basic object. However, if you want to go for the extra mile, you can make it a tractor or car, anything in its basic form. Or if it's an alien picking up something, you can make a box version of a cow, anything like that. So basically, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make a really quick UFO. We're going to call this, my UFO right here. Convert to. And you can remember to style up your alien ship however you want. If you want to take that extra time to create your own custom alien ship, feel free. I'd love to see how creative you can be as well when it comes to actually creating your own ship. So I'm going to do this, extrude this inward like that. A simple UFO type ship right there. And if I rotate that around, get a very unique shape. And this could be my dome. Here, I'll go to my front view. So you see how I just turned this object into a new UFO, a new type of UFO. It's as simple as just playing around with the same tools that I taught you. Extrude. I'm going to detach this dome here. Detach there. And I'm going to change the dome transparency to 0. Let's say 4. Border. Lower a border. And I'm going to cap this right here. So using the same tools that I taught you to work with, I just made a quick UFO like that. You should already have your quick UFO. If not, start working on your UFO so you have something to put in your scene. So for me, I have this basic scene layout like that. And now to start with, to build your more objects, I want to actually give you a couple little tutorials for advice. So this is what's called going from low poly to high poly. And I taught you with the alien spaceship how to do that. Make sure that you follow these steps. So I'm going to open up a new notepad here and write down the steps. Start. When you start building a model, you should always start with these steps. Step 0, reference. Finding the art. Or creating the art, if you're the artist. Step 1, low poly model. So step 1, we'll be working on the low poly version of our model, which you see my alien ship here, which looks good. Step 2, adding and editing detail. So adding and editing the detail includes things like slicing, using the cut tool, adding new vertices, adding new edges, playing around with that until you get finalized low poly. So you finalize your low poly model. Step 4, you begin by changing the smoothing groups. So making sure that the smoothing groups all look smooth in the right places and harsh in the other places. Wherever it needs to be harsh, make sure it's harsh. Wherever it's smooth, make sure that it's smooth. That's all you need to do for that. Step 5 is creating the high poly alternative. So the high poly alternative, what I call the high poly alternative, is basically things like turbo smooth and mesh smooth, which we go into our modifier list and we add turbo smooth or mesh smooth, and organizing that to work exactly the way we want, because this will be a high res mesh with the turbo smooth. If you push 7 on your keyboard, you can see the polygon count in the top left corner. 406, and with turbo smooth on, 14,000. So that's what the turbo smooth does. Now, make sure that still, even when you're starting your high res version of your mesh, even when you start stage 5 here, you need to do final edits. And that means if, for instance, I added turbo smooth to this model to add the right amount of polygons and make sure everything looks curved, this might be too much detail. This might not be right. Maybe the curves are wrong. This will require your final step of editing, which is going into polygon mode or whatever mode in editable poly, turning on the show end result vial, and starting to do the modifications you need, whether that be adding in new loops or like adding in more detail to your model. Like here, I'm going to use a slice plane tool. And you see this, using the slice plane tool will actually preview how your model looks with the new slice. And you see just by adding that new slice here, my edges of my model here already look way, way better. And that's what I mean by final editing. So even when you start adding your turbo smooth and mesh smooth, it may be close to the final stage, but it's definitely not the final stage. There's still a lot of editing that you can do. Like, see, just like slight smoothing group edits, and my model's already looking better. You know, oh, maybe I forgot the engine down here. So don't forget to always take care and start adding in this detail at any stage that you're working in. We can start doing this. So I'm going to add an extrude here. There. There you go. So like this little detail, although it doesn't seem like a crazy amount of work, it adds that little extra detail that makes my UFO and ship much more convincing. I'm going to extrude outwards just a little bit like this. Extrude. I'm going to change smoothing group of these ones first, from 3 to 4. Extrude them out. Like that. Do an inset. And then extrude them inwards. So that little extra effort and time, all of a sudden I got a UFO with different parts. When I add the lighting, sometimes the 3D Studio Max lighting in the scene is not perfect, so don't worry too much about that. When we do our final renders, that's what's really going to matter for our scene. So now that I have a UFO in here, and it's in front of my barn, I know I'm not going to see that part of my barn, so I might choose an angle like this. You can create ground by just making a plane. Luckily enough, it appeared green for me. And you can see our scene is already starting to form here. Like that. And it's time to start adding more detail. This could include trees in the background, mountaintops, but really I just want you to have a basic scene set up so that we can do a nice rendering when we get to the next step. So, setting up my alien ship was a little bit easier, and I showed you just a couple of tools that you can use. I'm going to show you a couple more tools and also refresh your mind on a couple of tools just so you can get your scene started. So remember that your scene must have these 3 main objects, three small objects. Well, I'll go 2 to 3 small objects. So choose 2 or 3 of these. 1 pickup object, and it could be one of the small objects or it could be a new object. And if you want to go the extra mile, go a little crazy, make a very low poly, because I don't want you to put too much detail on this. This is just the extra mile, so you can even just make it out of blocks. Make a block tractor, a block mechanical device, or something that the alien is picking up. Remember, the alien is using a tractor beam or hook to pick up an object, and that's the point of the assignment. So, let's say we have this box, right? Very simple box, not a lot of segments. If you push 7 on your keyboard, it's a 12-sided polygon right here. So nothing really extravagant has been done with this box. We need to make sure that we know how to edit our box. We're going to think ahead of the game. But let's say you didn't think ahead. And right now, we just have a simple box that's turned into an edit poly. And oh no, it's too low on the segment counts. We need a lot more polygons to be able to build detail in. Well, what can we do? There's lots we can do with just basic edit poly mode and polygon. We can select these polygons. We can go to our slice plane tool, and we can start slicing in new planes. And click on slice plane, hover our orange box around our model until we have it in the location we want, and click slice. Turn off slice plane mode. We already have some more detail to work with. I can use my extrude tool to extrude new polygons. And if I use an extrude, I'm still holding left click. I never let go. I left click to extrude and I move it however, whatever location I want. Let's say I move it right here. We're almost exactly on the same exact spot I extruded from. And then I just use the scale tool. See, I just turned a box into, let's call this a wooden crate for now. So let's say slice plane takes too long. I don't have time to organize my slices the way they want to be. I want to do something really quick. Well, you can use the quick slice tool. What the quick slice tool does, if you left click on it and enable quick slice mode, you're able to click once in your scene and click a second time to form a cutting line. So you'll see I have my model here. Left click once here, left click once over here. With the polygon selected, don't forget that. Quick slice, left click here. You can see if you left click on one location, look, it's trying to draw a line across your model already. So it's usually best to work in a front view, a top view, a side view, something like that. But if you want to work in your perspective mode, there we go. I use the quick slice tool to make a line. Quick slice tool to make another line. Up and down, same thing. Quick slice, quick slice. And then we can modify the middle. Don't forget, we don't have just the extrude, we have the bevel tool as well. You can bevel. Bevel here. Bevel there. Bevel everywhere. I don't know what that's looking like, but something cool, right? Bevel here. Bevel there. Looking pretty neat out. Don't forget, we also have the inset tool, so we can create inset marks in our 3D model. We can create them in groups. We can also separate them out. I don't know what it is, but it looks pretty neat, doesn't it? And don't forget your smoothing groups. If you go to polygon mode, editable poly, we're in polygon mode. If you go down to smoothing groups, this is where we assign our numbers to determine how things are smooth. Right now, none of these models that we've extruded have smoothing groups, so we should probably assign them some when we get down to that phase. But for right now, I'm pretty comfortable the way it is. So here's another thing that we can create. I'm going to create a box beside this one. So I showed you quick slice, and you know about the slice plane tool, but let's say those both don't work for you for some reason, and you want something that works with the edge loops that you got on a more complicated model. So instead of a box, I'm going to make a sphere. So if I were to try and slice plane a sphere on its side, the first thing that would happen, I'll actually turn the segments down here like this. Okay, there you go. I'll convert it to an edit poly, and I'll try and go to slice plane. So I'm trying to line it up as best as possible, and maybe I'm running into little errors, and I'm like, I can't slice plane this right, and even quick slice, I can't maybe quick slice this right. Like, see, look, it's going to tear through half the model, so that becomes a slight issue for us to play around with. What you can do is access the toolbar at the very top, and it's called the ribbon. This is called the ribbon bar here, and this ribbon here has a shortcut for everything we've been playing around in the editable polygon menu. And if I go through there, and if I go to edit, we have a tool called Swift Loop. What Swift Loop does is it tries to create a loop according to your 3D model's path. According to the other paths in your 3D model, this one will try and create a loop as best as possible. You can drag your mouse over your model. You don't even have to left click or right click. Just drag your mouse over the model with edit loop on, and you can see it's already going to preview where if you left click, it will create new segments for you to play around with. If you hold shift on your keyboard, it will try and make new segments between the old segments. So if I hold shift, you see it's snapping. And now you see how much details on this side of the model that we cut versus this side. Lots of detail that we just added, so we're able to do a lot more with this side of the model. And it still stays within all the edge loops. So we know that we have a perfect model that we don't need to edit too much. And now we have the detail that we can play around with to create whatever we want. So you can just do that. Extrude. And then I'll mesh smooth or turbo smooth. There you go. If you ever want to make a happy tennis ball for any reason, you got it. So, learning how to use the quick slice tool, the slice plane tool, and the swift loop tool will all come in handy for creating new loops inside your model. Don't forget that you have to go through these different phases. Reference, find your art, make your low poly, add and edit the detail, finalize your low poly, and make sure to change the smoothing groups. I make these in two different categories because a lot of people forget this one, changing the smoothing groups. Create the high poly alternative, which means add turbo smooth or mesh smooth. And always make sure that they're still in the modifier stack. Never collapse turbo smooth or mesh smooth. Always just make sure they're there, just so you can turn on and off the high poly mode while you're playing around, and then do your final edits to your model. Now this works in parts too. Just because we made a UFO doesn't mean it just has to be one model UFO. It can be UFO, dome, gun, license plate, antenna. So you can break down your models in all these different parts so you have a lot of control over them. And then when we need to unwrap, we can start worrying about that. When we do the unwrap phase, we'll add a new modifier and we'll add it to this list. But currently, I'm okay with just reference, low poly, add and edit your detail, finalize your low poly, change the smoothing groups, create the high poly alternative with turbo smooth and mesh smooth to get that final nice high poly result, and then do your final edits. So for instance, this is 86 polys right now. If I add turbo smooth and organize by smoothing groups, you can see that this model is not looking good with the correct smoothing groups. However, if I go to polygon mode and turn this vial on, show end result on off, and then I change these smoothing groups to different numbers. So 3, and this one's 4. These ones will be 8. The underneath models will be 18. We got a lot of polys to play around with to figure out where these smoothing groups go. But as you can imagine, when we start clearing off these and making sure they're in the right location, this one will be 22. Maybe this face will be a different number here. Then we add more polys in our turbo smooth modifier here. You know, the cleaner you get it, the better the models look. And that's really going to be your focus for when you start creating your alien ship, your barn, and everything else. It's going to be a high focus on just trying to create high quality models that are low poly. I know that you want to rush to high polygon modeling, especially if you want to do cutscenes or high polygon characters. But learning to master low poly and making sure they're refined and good, making sure you delete invisible polygons like that won't be seen by the camera, making sure that the smoothing groups are right, creating the high poly alternative just using basic turbo smooth and mesh smooth for now, and then doing all your final edits. These are the steps to creating very good base meshes that you'll be able to use for animation, for in-game characters, for bases for movie and commercial type characters. So I want you to spend a lot of time working on that barn, working on that silo, working on that alien ship, working on the objects for your scene, and getting that all together as a final model. This is a lot of work to do, and it's using the same exact modeling trick, like lessons that I've taught, like tricks and tips. Just be sure that you follow these steps to get your final modeling, basically method in. It's called modeling etiquette, and that's what this is, and that's what you're going to need to remember. You need to follow the laws of modeling etiquette. Etiquette. That's how you spell it. So following this modeling etiquette formula, or I actually prefer to call formula. I lied. Modeling formula. Following this modeling formula will be the best, get you the best results you can in your low poly. And then when we really, really want to get to the high poly alternatives, like making sure that we have the high poly mode that we're able to switch back and forth to, that'll be great. The reason why we have the alternatives, the low poly and the high poly, just with a flick on and off of Turbo Smooth, is that we can play around with our low poly meshes very easily, switch on Turbo Smooth, and then be able to switch back and forth at a constant rate. Now, this won't work for when we get to really, really high detailed meshes when it comes to characters. This works well for inorganic objects, but when it comes to organic objects, it's more reliant on us. Don't forget to play around with your modifiers as well, the things like chamfer, things like shell, and just start going crazy. So remember that you have your barn, you have your silo beside the barn, and your alien ship that need to be done. Those are the three main objects. Try and make at least a couple of small objects. Like if they're really plain and easy, that's not a problem. It's just to fill out your scene with a shovel, pitchfork, hay bale, shotgun, anything you want to give it more of a farm feel, and have the alien pick those up. And if you want to go the extra mile, the alien can be picking up a shovel, could be picking up a shotgun, could be picking up a block character. But if you want to go the extra mile, make a block version of a car or a cow or a tractor, anything like that, and have the alien look like he's picking that up. For those who are curious on how you would make something look like the alien is picking up something, I'd have my alien ship, which is, let's make this right here. Let's call that my alien ship. And you want to make a fake looking tractor beam, just make a cylinder like this. Convert it to an editable poly. Make a cylinder with less height segments. I thought my view was on. So my cylinder only has one height segment, so that it's just the top and the bottom. I scale in this, and you can see we get a nice tractor beam looking object. We can right click on object properties and change the visibility of that to 0.2. Remember that even at 0.2 visibility, it still shows a bit of color. So if you want, you can change the color of it. And we have a green tractor beam like object right now. And we can even delete the polygon on the top and delete the bottom poly. And see that if we have that underneath our alien ship, we get a nice tractor beam look. And if there's an object in there, it kind of looks like an alien's trying to pick it up. I'll supply you with a background when we talk about the rendering process, but please for now, the large assignment is getting a barn done, getting a silo, an alien ship with a tractor beam, and something in that tractor beam, maybe one object laying around, one or two objects laying around. And if you want, you can put some ground in there with a plane. And then we will talk about putting in backgrounds and doing nice renders and everything else. So get started on that, and stay tuned to the next video where we'll be talking about rendering. Thank you very much. Good luck.